I be saying, hey friends, like y'all just walked into the room or something. I was in the gym boo-hoo crying. Your gift isn't necessarily for you. Pickup lines make me want to square up with people. I go home and behind closed doors, I'm like, y'all have no idea. I have such negative thoughts the same way everybody else does, yet my calling is to be motivating and inspiring and full of love. And it's hard for you to look in that mirror and speak life into yourself sometimes. Yeah, I know I'm gonna make it through, so why not openly speak about it in the midst of making it through? If I'm not entertaining anything or anybody out of disobedience, it was meant to happen. God needed that to happen for whatever reason is above me. When you really hear what I'm saying, it changes so much of how you experience life.
It's the day that the Lord has made. Nothing to say, I can talk down. Oh, let's get to know where you live right now. So let's not waste another day. Come to find out to see.
Hey friends. I be saying hey friends like y'all just walked into the room or something. I literally put y'all up. And I'd be like, oh, wow, shocked to see you here. Like, girl. Anyway, hey friends, what's up, y'all? I'm on my way to pick my son up from school, but I just had it in my mind about how great live was this morning. Live was so good this morning. I don't even know what it was, but I was really just recapping my last vlog. But the conversations were so good. Like, people were asking such good questions, or they were giving such good positive feedback on what I was saying, that it just kept like jump starting my thought process. And so we were on there for like 2 hours just having a deep conversation. It was so good. If y'all don't be seeing me on live, what are we doing? You gotta follow me on TikTok. I'm live every Monday through Friday at 9:30 a.m. EST. So I did, of course, get up and go to the gym this morning, like my normal routine. I had a really good workout. I did not vlog in the morning because I think for this week I'm just going to try to vlog sometime later in the day, just because mentally I really need that alone time this week. I got a lot going on personally, and I feel like I could just really benefit from the quiet mornings like I've always had before I started vlogging. So anyway, I did get up this morning per usual, my normal Monday routine. I was up at 3:30 and I put a sermon on, the sermon of PMJ from yesterday. For those that have never heard me talk about my pastor, it's Rock City TV on YouTube. Pastor PMJ, I put his sermon on this morning from yesterday that he just preached yesterday. And when I tell you, I was in the gym boo-hoo crying. Like, I had to stop for a second and just like let it out, you know, like one of those, if people see me, they just finna see me, but like I can't right now. I can't even keep it in, because his message was so on point with what I needed to hear this week. And ooh, Jesus, we started talking about it this morning on live. Like, I was explaining certain parts of what was hitting me in the sermon, and one of the parts he was talking about how your gift isn't necessarily for you, right? Like, he was talking about how you can come off as so strong to everybody else, but then behind closed doors, it's sometimes hard to take your own advice, to give yourself the advice that you need, type of thing. What are these cars doing? Like, what are y'all doing? Pickup lines make me want to square up with people. That actually felt really good to get off my chest. Like, the freaking school pickup line, it makes me want to, like, why are y'all doing that? Why? Anyway, he was basically talking about how your gift is not for you necessarily, and that's why it can be really difficult to give yourself the advice that you so freely give to everybody else. And it really hit me because that happens to me a lot, and I've opened up about that a little bit as far as imposter syndrome, because it can be really hard to be out here doing so well in my calling as far as motivating people, inspiring people, spreading love, you know, and then sometimes behind closed doors it's like, wait, I cannot always inspire and motivate and speak love into myself, you know. Sometimes behind closed doors I struggle I say sometimes, I struggle all the time. I have the same type of negative, foul thoughts in my head that everybody else experiences. I just work really, really, really hard to make sure that the positive thoughts in my head are always louder than the negative thoughts. And it's a lot of work, to be honest with you. But I get that imposter syndrome sometimes because I know that I'm so motivating. I know that I'm inspiring. I know that my story is ridiculous. Like, God wrote the story himself. I know it's good. I didn't write it, you know? So sometimes when people give me compliments and they're like, you're just such a light, or you're just so inspiring, or you're just so motivating, and then I go home and behind closed doors, I'm like, y'all have no idea what I be thinking about in my head, you know, how much of a failure I be classifying myself in my own mind, or how I constantly feel like I'm behind, or I constantly feel like I'm a burden to myself and to other people. Like, I have such negative thoughts the same way everybody else does, yet my calling is to be motivating and inspiring and full of love and light. And it's like my default, you know, like, it doesn't make sense. It's my default to do that. Like, living out my calling has been the easiest thing for me ever, because that's who I am. Like, all I have to do is show up in any room and be me. Cool, easy. It's just hard to show up behind closed doors as that version of myself that God has called me to be. And that gets difficult. In that sermon, he said that your gift is not necessarily for you. He said that apple trees don't eat apples. Don't let that go over your head, bro. He said apple trees don't eat apples, right? Like, apple trees produce apples. The passer buyers, he said, are the ones that are benefiting from that apple tree producing apples. And that's why oftentimes it can be hard to give yourself the same advice that you so openly give to everybody else. Even though you know that you need that advice too, it's hard for you to receive that advice. It's hard for you to look in that mirror and speak life into yourself sometimes. Yet it's easy to speak life into everybody else because that's your gift. Of course, he preached a whole sermon, so there was a lot more that he said, but that part in particular just really touched my spirit so much this morning. Like, I was really crying at the gym, something serious. He was talking about how you're strong for everybody else because it's basically part of your calling, you know, but it's hard to be strong when you're alone. It's hard to be strong to yourself when you need it. Not to mention on the days where you don't feel strong, right? Like, on those days when you feel like you're falling behind, or you feel like you're just exhausted and you don't do anything, or you feel like you were showing up as the old version of yourself for a minute, like you feel like you failed. It's so easy to feel like, oh, I'm not strong. I'm not this strong, inspiring individual that everybody says that I am. Because if they knew how I was acting in this moment behind closed doors, or if they knew how I was showing up, then they would understand that I'm not as motivating as everybody assumes, you know? Like, oh my gosh, when I say he was preaching, man, he was preaching, and it was really speaking to me a lot, because obviously that's me. Like, God, it's so difficult sometimes for me to not be so hard on myself the way that I teach everybody to not be so hard on themselves. Like, it's so difficult for me to not view where I'm at as a failure, or get down on myself for not being able to go hard every day, all day, you know, for ever feeling like I need a break, or for having any negative thoughts or doubts, or lacking faith, or not being able to fully show up as the person God is calling me to be at any given moment. It's like the second that I have any type of bad days, or where I show any sense of weakness, it's like mentally I go on like this spiral. I will say that certain topics like this I feel like are a little bit difficult for me to discuss, because I'm never looking for sympathy, you know? Like, I don't sit around feeling sorry for myself that I'm experiencing hard things. It's more so like I allow myself to feel them in the moment. Like, this is a really hard season, or this is a really hard experience, or this is a really uncomfortable feeling. And it's not that I feel sorry for myself, or that I want anybody else to feel sorry for me. I think it more so is the fact that I know I'm going to make it through. So why not openly speak about it in the midst of making it through, if that makes sense? Like, why wait until I overcome it? I have faith that I'm going to overcome everything. You know, like, I never have a negative attitude anymore toward the things that I'm dealing with, because why? Like, that was another thing, y'all gonna get me preaching. But that was another thing that turned my whole world around about the sermon. This was actually a different sermon that I watched this morning. I'm really head down this week because I got so much going on, and I need a second to breathe. But I was watching a sermon, and he was talking about when you're going through negative times, when you're going through hard times, ask yourself if you are in God's will or not. And I'm telling you, baby, I had to pause it. Like, come on, because think about it. I'm about to explain it. Hold on. So ask yourself when you're in like times of trouble, or you're, experiencing hardships or whatever, if you ask yourself if you're in God's will, as far as, am I being obedient to what God told me to do in this moment? Am I supposed to be here right now? Did I stay obedient to what God wanted, or did I veer off and be disobedient and do whatever the heck I wanted to do? If I am in a moment and I know that I have stayed obedient, and I know that I'm in God's will, as in God wants me to be right here, God told me to come here, God told me to be with them, God told me to participate in this, whatever it is, if I know that God told me to do that and I'm being obedient, then it's so much easier for me to wrap my mind around the negative things happening, because I know that it's part of God's will. Does that make sense? Like, I know that I'm not outside of God's will, therefore anything happening, whether negative or positive, it's all going to work out for my good, because the Bible said so, because God said so. Because God has a plan for my life that is so beautiful. So if things in my life are happening that are negative, it has to be part of the plan. It has to be part of the process. I must be learning something from it. And to be honest, I have learned so much just in the past couple weeks, throughout all of my experiences, like getting to experience and be around such amazing individuals. I feel like they're all teaching me so much about myself, and it's so beautiful. It's been so hard. It's been so hard, but so beautiful at the exact same time. And even when any of those experiences turned out even the least bit negative, I know that that's what God needed to happen in that moment, because I know that I'm living in God's will. I know that I'm not here out of disobedience. I know that I'm not living this life out of disobedience. I know that I'm not working this job out of disobedience. I know that I'm not talking to them out of disobedience. I know that I'm not entertaining anything or anybody out of disobedience. Therefore, anything that happens, whether a conversation, an experience, an encounter, whatever happens, it was meant to happen. God needed that to happen for whatever reason is above me. But God needed that to happen, and it relieves my anxiety so bad, because when I'm living in disobedience, now it's up to me to figure out how to get out of here, right? Like, when I'm the one that put myself in the mud, now I'm the one that has to pull me out. When God is the one that allowed me to step into that mud, God is the one that's going to pull me out of that thing. Y'all really got me preaching in the pickup line. Be for real. Like, it's so much easier when you ask yourself that question and give yourself a real, raw, honest answer. Are you in God's will right now? I know that it looks bad right now. I know it feels bad right now. I know it's so rocky and confusing, and everything in life is lifing, I know. But are you in God's will? Because if you're in God's will, then you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Chill out. Chill out. Gosh, it's clearly me talking to myself and whoever else needed that message. I just think that is such a wild revelation to have. Like, when you really hear what I'm saying, it changes so much of how you experience life. I don't get as depressed as I used to get. I have seasonal depression, but depression does not take over my mindset, because I don't feel stuck in any situation. And I know that a lot of my depression came from the fact that I felt so stuck where I was at in life. Like, I felt so stuck with my circumstances and everything that I had going on. And it just made me so depressed. I'm like, I'm going to spend the rest of my life doing this, living like this, feeling like this, experiencing this. Like, it just was such an awful feeling. But knowing that no season is permanent, knowing that this too shall pass, both the good and the bad, and having that solid belief that even when I'm having a really hard time, this will pass too. Like, this is part of the process, and it's going to teach me something, and it's necessary. When I know that I'm living in God's will, I also know that everything that I'm experiencing is necessary. Nothing is going on just because. You think God just had a little bit of extra free time, he got a little bored and put you through the mud a little bit? Come on, like, it sounds so ridiculous. Knowing that everything is truly happening for a reason, it makes so much more sense to me. It makes so much more sense to me that everything happens for a reason when I know that I'm living in God's will, when I know that I'm living in obedience, because I know and understand and fully believe that God has a beautiful plan for my life. He's not going to let time be wasted, and it's just freeing. I'm going to put the link to the sermon that I watched, a couple of the sermons that I watched recently, down in the description if you guys want to check them out. But I honestly think I'm going to start doing my vlogs in the pickup line, at least for this week. Just try it out, because honestly, there has been so much happening in my life, not negative or anything like that, but there's just been so much happening in my life in general, in every aspect. And I've been really needing that just slow alone time in the morning. I really benefit a lot from that. So I'm going to see how it goes. I'm going to try to vlog in the afternoons instead, because clearly I got a lot on my mind in the afternoons too. So anyway, I guess you'll know if I stick to that, if tomorrow it's daylight outside when I vlog. All right, I am almost to the front, so I will see you guys back tomorrow. Bye, friends.